Hey everybody, thanks for joining the webinar today. We're super excited to bring some market analysis and some insights on maybe how that can shape your business coming into the next year. With us today, we've got Herb Dirks, the CEO of HDPhotoHub. Good to see you, Herb. I get to see you often, but good to see you here.
Yeah. Good seeing you too, Ian.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're doing this. This is going to be fun.
I know, I'm super excited, right? Like being able to give businesses information that helps them really like answer questions during the off season when it's the downtime. I think that really matters. There's a ton of value in that. So I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, me too. All right, let's take a look at the agenda that we're going to go over today. So just going to start with a little bit of an introduction. Then we're going to talk about what has happened in 2025. We'll move on to some analysis comparing growing versus shrinking businesses. Then we'll talk about and look at some key decision metrics. And then we'll do some looking ahead to 2026 and then close it up.
Sweet. Sounds good.
All right. So to get started, really what's the purpose of the webinar and the point of us pulling all this data together and presenting it? Well, we want to look at market trends from the 2024 to 2025 year. So to be clear, what we're looking at is, so at time of recording, we're at the beginning of November. So we're looking at a 12-month period, the last 12 months. So 2 months of last year and then the 10 months that make up the substantial part of this 2025 year, and comparing that 12-month period to the same 12 months from the prior year.
Oh, right. So right now, the data we're going to be looking at is 24 to 25 from right November to the very end of October.
Correct.
And then the comparison is against 2023 to 2024.
Correct.
Right? Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the reason we're looking at this data is so that we can do so that the people that watch the webinar can take a look at some of these benchmarks and see how their businesses compare to those numbers, and get a sense of how their business is doing, and then of course the reason for doing all of that is so that we can hopefully share some ideas for how people can grow their business looking forward to 2026.
Yeah, right. I feel like we always say it at HDPhotoHub, we're aligned with our customers, and what we want them to do is grow. We want them to get more orders, and we have data that will help understand broad trends in the market to say, hey, the businesses that are really succeeding right now are doing these things. If you're not doing them in your business, it may not be right. It doesn't mean it's right for your business.
Sure.
But it definitely could be, or it could be something that you go, you know what, during this off season, I do want to figure out how to implement that in 2026 because it feels like I'm missing something and I'm looking for some more growth.
Yeah. And so as we head into the slow season, it's the time of year where people are getting introspective and doing a lot of deep analysis. We're out of for most parts of the country, we're out of the busy time of the year. And so it's a great time to sort of pause and reflect and plan. And so hopefully some of this information will be helpful. Maybe the businesses that are listening to this are ready for taking another step. Maybe they're not. And hopefully this data will help them understand kind of where they fit and what the opportunities are.
Yeah. Sweet. Let's get into it.
All right. So the first thing we're going to do is a retrospective looking back at 2025. We're going to look at 3 key areas: national listing trends, rich media adoption, and then as kind of a fun one, we're going to look at some of the 3D tour providers and how they compare with each other. So first up is national listing trends. So this is a look at the last 12 months, and we're comparing again, 2024 to 2025. This is from the United States. This is data from the United States. This is data provided by the National Association of Realtors, and they've got a great website that you can go check out with a lot of detailed information. Interestingly, what we're looking at here is not one of the stats that the NAR typically puts forward and brags about the most, which is home sales. What we're looking at is new listings. And, for since National Association of Realtors primary audience is realtors, they all make their money when a sale occurs. But in our space, in the real estate photography space, a revenue event occurs when a listing happens. And so that's why we're looking at listing growth.
Yeah, makes total sense, right? These are basically like number of opportunities. I think something that Herb mentioned that the NAR stats for the U.S. people. I'm sorry, Canada, but for the U.S. people that are with us, the NAR stats are pretty cool because you can go in and you can actually dial it into your metro or into the zip codes that you work in. So you could take some of this national data and bring it in a little bit more to your market and see how it compares if you're into the numbers or maybe because it's just sort of broad general data, maybe just throw it into like an AI thing and be like, hey, how does this compare? I feel like it's crazy all the stuff AI can do these years.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what we saw comparing 24 to 25 is overall listing growth was up. The number of new listings was up 5.7%. And if you look at the month by month, it did vary by month. So in the springtime, the growth was greater, and the last few months it's been a little tighter. September was actually slightly down compared to the prior year, but the other 11 months were all up.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. It seems like on the biggest gaps are in those busiest months too, April and May. So that's kind of interesting. But the only 5.7% growth. That's a little bit under what all the the talking heads out there were predicting. They were more in that like 7 to 9 range. So it's a little bit of a downturn compared to what they thought.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing that's interesting is if for anyone that's looking at their own business, if your business growth was up more than 5.7%, then you're doing well. If you're at 5.7%, you're kind of on par, at least nationally. And of
Right.
course, you don't want to overweight the national statistic, but that gives you kind of a rough idea. So even if you felt like your growth was somewhat sluggish and you were at say 10% or 15%, it's still really up compared to the market opportunities. All right, so next up, let's look at rich media adoption. So rich media is going beyond just regular photos and dipping into some of the more advanced type of things. We looked at 3 categories: video, floor plans, and 3D tours. And on this chart, what we're looking at is 2024 and 2025. And what I find super interesting on this chart is that video, which was our biggest grower in these 3 categories last year, was kind of flat in year over year this year.
Yeah, that's super surprising. I would have expected to see that. It just feels like there's growth happening in that area.
Right. Now, the other thing I didn't expect is floor plans are way up. So floor plans grew a lot in the last year. So the demand there seems really high.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I wouldn't. Yeah, I would think there's some providers out there that have made it quite easy to capture floor plans that have really changed that. It's pretty wild to see how much growth there is there. It just makes you wonder: are there a lot of businesses out there that are starting to include it on everything, or what's pushing that growth? I don't know, but fascinating to know that that's a trend nationally.
Yeah. I've also, I've also seen that in certain marketplaces, it seems like floor plans in particular will sort of catch fire. And when they do, it becomes something that every listing has to have. It's sort of table stakes in that market.
Right, the realtor demand gets there, right?
Right.
To where it's like, hey, do you do floor plans? Hey, I want a floor plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in a market where that hasn't yet happened, it has happened in other places. But if you're in a market where that has not yet happened, then that may be an opportunity to sort of lead the charge, where you could be one of the companies that's really aggressively promoting floor plans and sort of making that one of the big things, that areas of focus. So, and then the last category here is 3D tours, also up, although not as much as floor plans, but still up more than video. So, some modest growth there. So I don't know if it's starting to peak or what is sort of suppressing that, but definitely there's a little growth in that 3D tour space. I think, and that actually leads us to the third chart in this category, which is 3D tour providers. And this one I found super interesting as well. So in this space, there's really three companies that are kind of running away with the 3D tour space: Zillow 3D, Matterport, and iGuide. Interestingly, though, comparing last year to this year, Zillow 3D has grown quite a bit. So that category of product has expanded quite dramatically relative to the others, growing to almost 7% of listings having a Zillow 3D. 7% still a pretty small percentage of the overall listings, but it's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, that piece was actually surprising to me when I had a chance to take a look at the data. I was expecting, our scale over on the left there that goes up to 8%. I was expecting, 3Ds to be nearing or above that 10% range. I was actually kind of surprised to see it enter. I guess collectively, it moves up quite a bit, but
It does.
yeah, it's wild to see the growth on the Zillow one. And I guess to clarify, these are of the listings that are within our customers, right? So
Correct.
yeah, so the listings that we can pull more detailed data on, we get to see this. So which I think probably have a large enough customer set that does a pretty good job of representing it nationally, but not perfect. So just throwing that out to people.
Yeah, and actually, it's not even all of our customers. So one of the things that when we were looking at analyzing this data, we took a look at the customers in our database, and we narrowed the field down to the customers that have at least 5 orders in every month of the last 24 months.
Okay.
And we did that so that we weren't skewing the data by having, as we've grown quite aggressively, and brought on new customers, we didn't want to skew the more recent data. So to keep a kind of a stable data set, we looked at, and that of course was hundreds and hundreds of companies. So it gave us a pretty, all over the U.S., a bunch in Canada. So it gave us a pretty broad cross section in a lot of geographic regions, but not. But yeah, it is our people who use our platform,
Right.
and people who use our platform may not be a pure representation of all real estate photographers, because it's people who are selecting into. I mean, let's be honest. The more expensive, the more sort of premium platform.
Well, yeah, the best platform.
Right.
I mean,
I mean, we may be a little biased about that, but
yeah, maybe.
But honestly, I mean, we are a platform that our pricing model is highly aligned with our customers and their success, and so that isn't for everybody, and so it is sort of a subset.
Yeah. But even if you're not on our platform, this data is still interesting, and hope that you guys still get some value out of checking out these stats and watching this webinar.
Yeah. All right. I guess one other thing to note. There were more than these providers in the data set, but the numbers of active listings dropped off like really aggressively.
Yeah, right.
And even some of these companies that have been around for a little while, Cloud Pano has been around for a while, and their market penetration actually went down. Same with Rico. So it's kind of interesting how just how far behind numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7 are compared to the top 3.
Yeah, it's dramatic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, next up, let's look at growing versus shrinking businesses. In this section, we'll talk about types of growth. We'll look at some growth groups that we kind of segmented people into. And then we'll look at the media types that are offered by those growth groups and the tech adoption by those different growth groups.
Sweet. I feel like we're getting into the fun stuff.
Yeah. So the first thing that I wanted to do was look at what are the different ways that you can grow a company. So, for example, your revenue could be up, but your order volume flat if you just raise your prices.
Sure.
Or, if you transition into focusing on more high-end stuff, your volume could go down, but your revenue could go up. So I just wanted to give kind of a across the board, just looking at all the customers in the sample set, what are some of the growth rates across different categories? And some of this was a little surprising to me. So revenue was up across the board. We saw an average of about 18% growth across all companies if you averaged all of them. And in this graph, we're looking at median and we're looking at average. So median is where's the center point of all the businesses. At what growth rate are half the businesses growing faster and half of the businesses growing slower than that level? So for revenue, again, about 18% was the median point. Interestingly, the average is quite a bit higher, right? So it was around 26%, which means that there are some companies that are growing faster than the companies that are shrinking.
Oh, gotcha.
So it means that there's some outliers in here, and we'll get to more on that in just a moment. But looking at some of these other metrics, the order counts are up quite a bit. So when you look at just the sheer number of orders, the growth on the quantity of orders grew a lot. The average order value also went up. Now that's interesting to me that you're seeing an increase in the number of orders and an increase in the average order value. The average order value is a metric we keep track of that shows what's the average ticket price or what's the average spend per order. And so when that number is going up, that means that the amount of spend on each order is on average a higher amount.
Right. So either that company raised their prices, or by more holistically, they're selling more add-ons onto the normal packages that they sell. Right. At the end of the day, per order, the agents are spending a little bit more.
Correct.
However that got there, right?
Yep. Yeah. Also, in both categories, the number of agents is increasing. So we're seeing more orders, we're seeing more agents. And of course, then the last item is average agent value. And so that's the sort of the annual value per customer. So how much is each customer spending?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, it's interesting to see how many more agents the average is there compared to the median of that's just wild to me.
Yeah, it means that we definitely have some outliers, some people who are growing their businesses, and probably from this chart, I would say that what we can glean from that is that the companies that are growing the most are doing so by procuring new agent business.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, so we took that data and broke the sampling of customers into 3 categories. So the first one is contracting. Those are people whose businesses actually shrunk last year to this year. That ended up being about 20% of the companies in our sample set. Hate to see anybody's company shrink, but glad that it was only 20% and that 80% are seeing some form of growth.
Yeah, right. And that could be market dynamics because, nationwide there was only 5% growth. So in some markets, you're definitely going to feel in some reduction or some very flat piece there.
Yeah, for sure. We've definitely seen some markets are a lot hotter than others. So that does make a big difference. The second group is the growing group. So these are the people that had a solid amount of growth. Some amount of growth, anywhere from even just a 0.1% growth all the way up to 44%. That ended up being the bulk of customers. That's about 60%. And then we identified a third group, which is we called thriving. So these are people whose business is growing 44% or more year over year. And that ended up being about 20% of the total sample set as well.
Well, right. And just going back to the sample set that we're looking at, so that means that's somebody who used us all the way through 23 and 24, and then we're comparing 24 to 25, and they grew more than 44%.
Yeah.
I was like, they're out there killing it.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And the fact that there was like 20% of the companies are doing that, that means that there's some people that have figured some stuff out.
Well, right. I mean, so 1 in 5 businesses using us is experiencing more than 44% growth year over year in their business after using our platform for 2 years.
Yeah.
That's like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we do what we do. That's why we're building it, right? It's great to see.
For sure. So then we went and looked at those same 5 metrics of revenue, orders, average order value, agents, and average agent value, but breaking it up by those 3 groups so that we could see kind of where each of those groups is winning and where they're not. So overall revenue for the contracting groups was down, but you can see it's down a little, but again, the growing group and the thriving group are way up. But look how much the thriving group is up. Their revenue is up so much on average.
Yeah, and then you look at their average order value, and it's up, but it's not nearly as dramatic as their revenue. And then you move to agents, and you see why their revenue is outpacing the average order value so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both orders and agents in that thriving group are way up. They're taking way more orders. They're working with way more clients. But here's the thing that I didn't suspect. I thought that the average order value would be either the same or maybe slightly less, and that is turning out to just not be true. So it isn't that agents are looking for the companies with the cheapest solutions. They're willing to spend a little more for the companies that they're migrating to. Super interesting.
Yeah, when I looked at this, the other thing that really stood out to me was the average agent value. So they managed to grow their agent set dramatically while also growing the average agent value, which would mean either you have agents spending more on average, but it's harder to move that number as much as we're seeing here. So the more likely case is that they're working with some of the best agents in their market who are capturing more of the listings and coming back and doing repeat with that business. So at least that's my read on what that data is telling us, that the customers that are thriving are capturing great agents who just do a lot of volume, and that way it's just pumping up that value for that agent.
And I think it's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer it. I don't know how to get to the bottom of it. Is it that those businesses are finding agents who are already great and are winning those customers, or are they helping their agents by providing superior marketing solutions win in the marketplace more? Because if you're a real estate photography company and you bring on a customer, if you help them provide marketing solutions that help them win listings, see, that's when I look at the average order value and the average agent value and see both of those going up. What I see is that people are spending more on average, and the lifetime value of the client is increasing at an even greater rate, which means that the clients that are the agents that are working with the fast-growing companies are themselves growing their businesses as well. So it creates a great virtuous cycle.
Well, right, and agents that buy good media tend to end up getting more listings because it's, every listing that you get as an agent is really just the way to market yourself to get your next listing. At least that's what I always hear.
Well, and isn't that so interesting? So many people think that great media is about selling the house. And I think once you're in this business for a little while, you start to realize how that's really more of a secondary effect. It really is, like you just said. It's the agents are buying superior media solutions to promote their brand because how they represent homes reflects on them.
Oh, right. That's one of the secrets that we hear, through all the different things that we get to go to, the conferences and things, is that how do you get an agent to spend more money? How do you make their AOV go up? They get one of those key listings that they're super excited about. And you go, hey, this is a really great listing. We're going to be able to capture some great media for this and make it look awesome. I really think we should add a drone because of the situation, or I really think we should add a floor plan, or I think we should add a 3D, and remind the agent that, hey, it'll be awesome when you put this out. And so the next time that you want to get a house that is of this same caliber, you can show them how you treat these houses in your marketing. And now they're not spending to sell that one property and like, what is my percentage and cut I'm going to get? How am I going to get my ROI? Instead, you get to put that ROI out over many listings of, hey, if you do a really great job on this one that you're so stoked about, but you could get another 10 that are like it. And now is that worth what you spent on the media? Now is it worth putting your personality out there in video on this particular listing? Once they understand. And not all agents always think that way. So sometimes it's kind of good to explain it to them, at least, you know.
Yeah, it's not always obvious. From an agent's perspective, they have to invest in a listing. They don't get paid until, until the home closes. So they're seeing these things as an expense, but helping them realize that it really is an investment into their brand really does go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so the next thing is media type by growth group. So these are the different types of media that are being offered by the different groups of growth. And in this case, what we're not looking at the amount of growth in each category. We're looking at the percentage of orders that include these types of rich media.
Okay.
So again, very interesting information here. So on those thriving organizations, those big time growing real estate photography companies, they're doing a higher percentage of video. So it is definitely that is up there. But the one that really stands out is floor plans. Floor plans are way up in what those thriving businesses are including in their offerings.
Yeah, like substantially. And then you compare it to the 3D tours, and the 3D tours in those thriving ones are actually down a little bit, which makes me wonder, are they leaning towards floor plan maybe in some of the packages that they offer where they're just including it a little bit more because they're able to get in and capture it super fast, where when you throw 3D in there, it's great, it's a good value add, it's great for premium houses, but it definitely the capture time is just different. You can't do, you can't do as many houses where it's a photo shoot and a floor plan when you compare it to a photo shoot and a 3D tour, right? You just can't do as many of the 3D tour houses in a day because it just takes longer to do the capture.
Yeah.
So that was like knock you on your seat. Interesting. I would not have expected to see the floor plans that high.
I wouldn't have expected that either. I think if I had to guess, and this is just a guess, we can look at the data, we can analyze it, but I think that what's happening is the 3D tours are still something that is perceived as a premium thing. And so a lot of agents are reserving that for the listings that are at the upper end of the price spectrum, where the floor plans are sort of mass market.
Mm-hmm.
Because they take less time to capture it, as you just said, that also makes them more affordable. And I think that the interesting thing about floor plans is that they're in that sort of sweet spot where it's quick enough to capture and it's affordable enough to offer that it's not considered that sort of premium product. It's more of a mid-range product.
Yeah, right. And seeing the growth in video is to see how much more relative to the other the contracting businesses and the growing businesses. I think that's interesting, particularly when we look at how many more agents, from the slide before, how many more agents they're capturing. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's constantly being told to agents, hey, you got to do more video. Hey, you got to get on camera. Hey, you got to get your personality out there. Hey, do more video for your listings. And bam, you're starting to see that here with the thriving companies, and that's leading to growth in their agents, potentially, right? It's hard to say, anytime that you're looking at the data, you make some assumptions, but it feels like that kind of lines up for a theory in my head.
Yeah.
I could be making it up, guys. I don't know.
All right. The last group the last slide in this group is tech adoption by growth groups. So here we looked at uses of our platform and how are each of the different groups, what's the adoption or uptake of each of these features. Of course, all the features on our platform are optional. We let the businesses decide what it is that feels good to them, what they want to use in their business. And I thought it was really fascinating to look at how some of these different groups are adopting the use of these different features. So first up is scheduling. Of course, that one, in this case, what we're talking about is real-time scheduling.
Yeah,
so
like agent chooses a day and time, like just straight off of the calendar and off of all the algorithm and the fun stuff that we do to enable that as a way to make it work. Yeah,
and it's interesting. I mean, the adoption of that is obviously super high. It has become a really important feature for agents to have access to in order to place those orders. But it's fascinating that the thriving group has an even higher adoption level.
Almost all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like if there's something on this chart, it seems like that real-time scheduling is the key to rapid growth.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I feel like, over the years, as that's got better and more capable for the businesses, and as I hear businesses that aren't using it saying, "Hey, Ian, I really need to figure out how to offer this in my business," I'm starting to feel some impacts locally of agents really liking the convenience of that. It's that one is probably the one of the least surprising things that I've seen
Mhm.
so far, that the thriving businesses are winning in that area, but definitely very noteworthy. I wouldn't have guessed how close to 100% it is, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's interesting, yes, there's agent demand for it, but the other thing is, how do you grow your business if you don't have the right systems in place to help you scale? So you really need to have the systems that allow you to scale up without having to pile on extra manpower.
Right, yeah, it can cost a lot to have your schedulers handling all that day in, day out, and your admins.
Mhm.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's the perfect type of thing that computers and robots should be taking care of,
Yeah.
and it scales well. Interestingly, the next category is referrals. A lot of people are using that. It's really high adoption rate. This was maybe a little higher than I would have thought, just sort of intuitively.
Yeah.
But all of the categories, a lot of people are using the referrals, which is great because it's a great feature and it is a great way to gather those Google reviews and those you know collect those stars that help the SEO and the algorithms route traffic to you.
Yeah, and just talking on the referrals for those of you who may not be on our platform, may not know what that is. So that's actually a setting that you can turn on in your business, to say, "Hey, give all of my clients that are ordering with me a referral code," and they can provide it to another agent. And if once that agent orders and I actually deliver products back to them, you can set a dollar amount that you want to credit the agent that referred that lead to you. And it has been amazing to see some businesses out there, how much extra revenue that's brought in from the agents that were referred to them. It's pretty wild. I've seen there's a few businesses out there that have had me, take a peek because they were so excited about them themselves, and it was like, you had seven-figure revenue growth because of that. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised. I would have guessed that the Google review percentages that we see in there, I would have guessed that that would have just been higher overall. I feel like it's such a great feature, and I get so much positive feedback from the people that are using it of like, "Hey, I had 8 Google reviews, and now I turned this on, and it's been running for 4 months, and now I have 70, and it's amazing." And that local SEO piece is such a big deal when what businesses are popping up, what businesses is Google recommending.
Mhm.
Fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last category is upsells. And so this was a feature we rolled out about a year ago.
Mhm.
And so this is where on the order form, you can have the system offer to add an add-on at the end of the transaction. And again, I'm surprised that more people aren't using that feature. It's an easy way to help grow your average order value is to just ask for that extra sale. Encourage people to throw a drone shoot in or whatever.
Floor plan maybe?
Floor plan for sure. And it's such an easy thing to enable and turn on.
Yeah, I mean, it's correlating with the growth. It's correlating with the businesses that are growing the most in the per client revenue and the average order value. You come back and see, that's one of the ones that has a little bit more gap than some of the others.
Hmm.
They're utilizing that, and it's leading to some results.
Hmm. For sure. All right, so let's move into key decision metrics. So there's a couple of questions that people often ask, in particular this time of year. Should I expand my team and should I expand my territory? And we group these two questions together because they're kind of related.
Yeah.
It, really, it's should I grow my team in town or should I grow my team out of town?
Yep.
Right? Is kind of a way to think of it. So, all right, let's look at some of the numbers and see what we can figure out here. So the first thing that we looked at was the number of shoots per month per photographer. So in this case, what we charted out was how many photo shoots a photographer got on average in each month of the last 24 months. And of course, you can see the fact you can see this big dip in the center is last year's wintertime.
Yep.
There's a dip at the very beginning, so that's the end of the 2023 calendar year. So you can definitely tell that the number of shoots per photographer drops off in those slow seasons. What I think is kind of interesting here is that the contracting is quite a bit lower, and the growing and thriving are tracking, at least in the last year, tracking pretty close to each other.
Yeah, it's interesting to me too, where in, the thriving businesses, what we've seen over and over is that they've been kind of leading the charts. But this is one where, shoots per photographer in at least in the middle of 24, they're actually quite a bit down come in relative, like, right, it's like 5 shoots, so it's not quite a bit down, but like 5 shoots per photographer on the team, lower than what just the sort of normal growing companies were. And it's just interesting to think about. So those photographers aren't out shooting quite as many as kind of that big chunk of people that are growing, where those businesses are keeping their photographers full. And it's interesting that that's changed as we've entered 2025 too, where you start to see that coming back together. And now those thriving businesses, maybe that's one of the reasons that they're thriving is they didn't need to grow their team, but they were able to grow the number of orders that each of their photographers were producing. So, they weren't spending as much time hiring and training as much as they were filling that pipeline. And I think that that's fascinating.
Well, and you compare last year to this most recent 12-month period, and that thriving group is up, but it's not up 44%. So what that means is what I interpret that to mean is that yes, they may have increased their photographer shoot density some, but they also scaled in a way that kept it kind of in line.
That is interesting and good call out because right, it's not 44% higher. So they were still growing their team, but it was because they were piling shoots in there like, geez, all right, we better get up there.
Yep.
Right. And this is an interesting one if you are comparing your business to it to look at and just say, all right, if I took my team of however many photographers you have and I divide the number of orders relative to that, where do I fall on this? Right. The growing companies are all in that 35-ish range of shoots per photographer.
In the busy season, yeah.
Right. In the busy season. And it is, quite a bit lower. Right? Again, it's like 10 shoots per photographer. But when you have when you have 5 photographers, that's 50 shoots during that time that your business wasn't collecting. That's quite a bit down. So I think that's an interesting one for the businesses out there to kind of benchmark.
Yeah.
Say, where am I at and how close to those growing businesses am I at?
Yeah, and I would say too, if you've got a business that's substantially above that line, like if the number of photo shoots per month per photographer that you're doing is quite a bit higher, you may be constraining your ability to grow by not having enough availability.
So, yeah, I don't remember. Do we have a slide that kind of spoke to some of that too, or no?
I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah. I was like, dang, I think I remember seeing something like that.
So the next slide is average lead time. And this also, I think, is really interesting. So just to be clear about what this is, it's the average number of days from the day that an order is placed until the photo shoot occurs. So that doesn't necessarily correlate directly to the availability of the photographer, strictly speaking.
Sure.
We're not looking at the first available appointment. We're looking at what the agent scheduled.
Yep.
So, but one of the fascinating things here is that this is one of the charts where the thriving group has the lowest number, not the highest number. And I think that goes directly to what we were just talking about on the last slide.
Well, right. How do you get new agents? What if you think about, I feel like it's often talked about that it's such a relationship business, and sometimes it's hard to win a client from another photographer that they've been working with for a long time. But when you look at how do you do that, particularly how do you do that in the busy season? All of a sudden, you've got that client or that agent who's like, I really need to get this listing up and my favorite guy is just he's 2 weeks out. I can't have my seller waiting that long. There's a lot of pressure to get this one done. I need to go look. And now maybe they're talking to agents in their office of like, "Hey, who are you using? Who do you recommend?" And all of a sudden these thriving business names come up, and maybe they even come up with a referral, right? We're definitely seeing some of that.
Hmm.
But the thriving business name comes up and say, "Oh, hey, yeah, I can almost always schedule my guy like within a week. Go check them out. Their availability is almost it's just great. They do a great job of managing that." And that
Yeah.
I think that that's important to know, particularly what you're calling out of, some of the smaller teams. I know there's lots of like, one person companies and two-person companies who are shooting like damn near 100 shoots a month on their own, which is
Hmm.
like, man, those guys are hustling and
Hmm.
like congrats to you to figuring out how to do that. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do in your business, and that may be just your sweet spot and where you want to be.
Totally.
But if you're one of those businesses and you do say, you know what, I want to focus more on growth, I know it's hard to hire. I know, but it gets easier every time that you do it. Every time you hire and train, how can you do that? Because when you're booked out, in this case, more than about like 8 days, but really during the busy season, like if you're booked out more than like 7 days,
Hmm.
you're starting to hit into that area where you're one of the contracting businesses, not one of the thriving businesses,
Hmm.
right? It seems like 6 days right now is the sweet spot, at least kind of what we're seeing on this chart, where it bumps up maybe to 7 a little bit during that busy day, or busy time, but that's fascinating to see. I think it's also super interesting, again, to see the difference between the last year, so the 24 numbers and the 25 numbers. It's interesting that they got a little bit closer in 25.
Hmm.
But again, it's all that growth that the thriving businesses were seeing. So while they were growing their team and while they were piling on more agents, they were getting busier per photographer, as we saw on the slide before, and so that lead time went up just a tick
Hmm.
over that time.
Yeah, totally. The other thing that kind of stands out to me on this chart is that the thriving businesses is the flattest line.
Yeah.
So they have good availability, short lead times, both in the busy and the slow seasons. So it's roughly the same amount of lead time, which means that when the busy times hit, those thriving businesses are able to maintain the same level of service. They don't use the fact that it's a busy time as a reason to let their lead time slip.
Yeah, right. And I feel like that kind of speaks to, because for sure, right? If they've got a team that's pretty large during the busy season and they're able to maintain that same team as they move into the slow season, for sure everybody's got sooner availability. So it kind of also speaks to, what do agents prefer?
Mhm.
How soon, when they say, all right, I got to get this listing ready, I need to go and book my photography appointment, where are their expectations? Because we know with those busy companies that they have more sooner availability than what we see on there,
Mhm.
but they're still picking around that 6-7 day where they're like, all
Mhm.
right, I'm gonna need here's the deal, homeowner. We're gonna get this shot in about a week, and then we're gonna get that back, and we're gonna go live in about 10 days or 12 days, right?
Yeah.
And it's really, how does that fit into your client's workflow?
Mhm.
Right? They're not ready yet to tell the homeowner like, hey, great, all right, we signed this listing. You've got 2 days to get the house ready, all the way photo shoot. We're not, let's
Yeah.
go. They want it to look the best, and so they are still picking that lead time that's there. So it's not like, at least from what I'm feeling from looking at this chart, it's not like if you push that lead time way down to 4 or 2 that you're going to see a change.
Yeah.
At that point, you're probably just way overstaffed, or you have an interesting market where they're going really fast. But if
Yeah.
you can keep it around that 6, it's great.
All right. So when it comes to expanding your team, if we of course can't tell people, yes, you should, no, you shouldn't. We're not really here to tell people how to run their business or what they should do, but we can pose some of the questions that are good to ask in order to help do the analysis and provide some data that helps with that. So I think some questions to consider when it comes to expanding the team. I would say number one, are my clients considering other companies because availability is too low? We just talked about that quite a bit on the last slide, and I think that does make a big difference. A loyal client might say, "Well, I'll just use this other company just for this one shoot because so and so is unavailable and this person is." I think you don't even want them to to experiment with another company. It's
Definitely
just
not.
playing with fire.
Well, right, and think about, as we kind of talked about what features and what technology are being used. All of a sudden, they use a company that offers real time scheduling, and you don't offer that real time scheduling, and they're like, "Dang, that was really convenient. I
Mm.
really enjoyed that process." And now it moves from I'm just going to do this one time to I'm going to do it again because that was just so easy, or like I'm in a pinch and I know that I can just go look at their schedule
Mm.
right now and know how available they are.
Yeah, and
It
it's and
changes it.
for sure. And it's not just scheduling. Scheduling is a big one, but it can be the homeowner's experience of the photographer, how what their bedside manner is in the home. It can be that the other company maybe bundles marketing kits with their packages and they come to love that. Like there's a bunch of things that can make the difference.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. I just, I'm over here in love with our smart scheduling
yeah.
feature.
Yeah.
I just can't talk about it enough.
All right, so the next question to think about, if I hire another photographer on my team, will I be able to keep their pipeline full enough? Of course, there's a risk when you bring somebody else on your team that they may not stick with you. And the number one reason that photographers will join a team and then leave that team is if they don't feel like they're getting enough business. And
Yeah, right. If they can't feed their family because they're,
right,
not doing enough shoots, that's problematic.
so overhiring it is possible to overhire, and it has negatives, it has downsides. So you want to be careful, on that side of the coin too.
Yeah. All while balancing that availability. Hey, we're not saying it's easy, people,
Yeah, right.
but looking at the data and what's here, this is kind of what we're seeing.
Mhm.
And I think it's noteworthy again, thinking about those slides where we talked about how many shoots per photographer were those businesses doing,
Mhm.
and figuring out where you are relative to that. That's probably a really good indication of should I be hiring or not hiring. I
Mhm.
think I love it. The point to me of bringing up these stats really is to try to answer some of these questions and say, all right, how can we give businesses some data to be
Mhm.
thinking about to change what they want to do next year,
Yeah.
if they want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that may or may not be a good fit,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the third question here is, do I have the systems and support team in place? It's also really important if you're going to expand your team to make sure that you have the back end support, right? If you double your team and you double your orders, can you handle that volume in a way that is, a positive thing in your life, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if we're talking business here, if you double your team, double your orders, if you don't have to double your admin team, then your margin is increasing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's every business loves to see their margin go up some. I
Totally.
think yeah, right. Obviously, for those who don't use HDPhotoHub, we have a great system to support the growth, and you can see that in our thriving businesses. But it is just you have to do it. And it's not just your technology, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to have your processes when you
Mm-hmm.
have, SOPs, I feel like is what the talking heads are always talking about. But when you have that stuff truly dialed in, that
Mm-hmm.
makes it so much like less stressful to grow. I'm sure many of the businesses that started out, they had those times where they're like, whoa, I'm getting really popular and I'm writing things on sticky notes, and I all of a sudden like I missed a shoot. I can't believe I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And right, like you don't want to experience that when you're doubling your business and you're already doing a lot of value, because
Yeah.
that hurts. That makes it hard to capture those new clients and hard to give them that first great experience so you can get their repeat business.
Yeah, for sure. Scaling up while maintaining the sort of brand promise that helped you grow in the first place, tricky business.
Yeah, I believe that.
So here's a few questions on should I expand my territory? These are just some things to think about in order to sort of ensure that you've got a strategy that will help be successful. So number one, is it easier to grow in the market I'm in or a market I'm not in? Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, as they say. But I would say if you haven't maximized the opportunities in your local market, then keep growing there.
This is a good spot where we mentioned earlier the data that NAR has available, where you can pull it for metrics. If you really have that itch to get outside of your area and you really feel like you're capturing everything that's in that market now, go look at the data and compare. If you're like, hey, we could shoot in this place that's a couple hours away, or we could shoot in this place that's an hour away that we don't normally do a lot of business in. go check it out on NAR and see, are there new listings going up or down over the last few years? How's that market doing? Because obviously, when there's a thriving market, then the people that are in there serving that market currently may not be able to handle all that capacity, which makes it a little bit easier for you to break in.
Totally. Yeah, and secondary markets are tricky too. Sometimes it's easier to get fooled by how easy it is to bring on new business if you're in a large metro, and then if you attempt to expand into a secondary market, sometimes the market dynamics are a little different. The price points may not be as high, and some other things like that. So it's important to keep in mind that markets do vary quite a bit from one to the next.
Yeah, I don't think that we pulled any stats on this particular thing, but something else that I would look at in that NARD data when you're considering that is not, I mentioned the new listings, which I think is probably the most important, but also the median home value of that market. Typically if we look across the nation on what we see is the areas that command the highest medium home prices are also be able to charge more for their photography services, which helps that ALV go up. If you've got, you're operating all of a sudden in a higher cost of living market, you can just charge a little bit more for your services because that's just normal.
Yeah, or be prepared to do vice versa. I think we have a slide coming up on
Oh,
some of
okay.
this.
All right. All
All
right.
right. So number two is, what is my strategy to establish a beachhead? This is one of the things that I think is really important to think through very carefully. You have to have some kind of an in that new market. Either if you want to, if it's close enough that you could travel to that market to try to sell into some of those uh, offices, or to establish relationships with agents, that's great. But it can be a lot of driving, and it can be a lot of back and forth that can wear on your patience more in a remote market than if it's in a local market. Now, if you've got a great relationship with a broker, and that broker has another office that's in that other market, that is a great in for establishing a beachhead. You can have that broker get you in an office presentation and generate a lot of referral business from from the fact that the broker is recommending you. Or if you've got a lead on a photographer to hire in that market, and that photographer has a bunch of relationships, and maybe they are just looking for a brand or systems support, and they want to join your team. And so they're not just coming on as just a photographer, but a photographer with some book of business as a starting point. The key is you got to have some way to get the flywheel started in that new market. If you just think you're going to buy a bunch of Facebook ads to break into a new market, it's a lot harder than that.
Yeah, it's tough. I hear often, when I get to talk to businesses and they're in, many regions, like, hey, what was your home region? What was your first and next one? It's really interesting. I often hear like, hey, I had a photographer that moved there. Their significant other got a new job in this new area, and it took them there, and they still wanted to shoot. And I knew that they were a great person, and I wanted to figure out how to make it work. And so it just sort of fell in my lap that we did that, and we went and worked hard. We were able to do it. But sometimes it just takes that. Yeah, it's not luck, because they're definitely out there trying and pushing. Like, I've heard lots of people who had a photographer move into a market, and that market does not take off. They were thinking they're expanding, they don't expand. It does take work to have it happen, but sometimes you just need the right circumstances to end up saying, okay, now's the time to go do this. This feels right.
Yeah, for sure. So then once you've got that beachhead established in a new market, or you have a plan for how you're going to establish that beachhead, the next question, and it's a different one, is what's your plan for building momentum? So you need to have some kind of method for taking those first few early adopter customers in that new region and growing that into something much larger. So this is where things like social media marketing can really come into play, and particularly around getting videos from those beachhead clients, and having those as referrals that you then use to market into that new area. Or but you got to have some kind of strategy for building it. It won't just happen organically on its own.
No,
And if you take your eye off the ball, it can fall apart real quick.
well, right. You're trying to work with people who already have established relationships with professional photographers. If you're working with the highest producing agents that are in that market, and I mean that first experience that they have of your business really matters, because there was something that there was friction that got them to try you in the first place, and so making sure that they have an awesome experience, huge deal.
For sure. Then the last thing to think about, just in terms of planting ideas for you to consider, can I offer enough of the same products to keep my packages consistent? So if you're using the same website to offer products in both your home market and an expansion area, if you've expanded your services to include a wide range of things, sometimes that's harder to scale up in a new area.
Yeah, we do have a feature. I get to pitch another feature here, luckily, where let's say you offer drone in your area, and the photographer that you hire in the new area, they don't do drone yet, they don't have their license yet, or they don't have insurance, and that's something that you really care about for all the people working with you. You do have the ability to turn on and off specific products by photographer, and the platform will actually understand, hey, this is a shoot in that new area, and the photographers that are enabled for that, they don't on like none of them offer the drone or none of them offer aerial, and so that product just doesn't appear in that area, even though you're selling it like crazy in your home area. And then of course, once that you're lot of reasons to tell that photographer like, hey, go get your license, let's do this thing.
For sure. All right. So another area of key decision metrics. So the other one that we want to look at today is, should I offer new services and should I raise my prices? These are two questions we get a lot.
Mm.
And we also group them together because they are directly, I think, related. So jumping into the first slide for this, this is looking at average order value by month. And honestly, what I found interesting about this slide is how uninteresting this slide actually is. So you'd think that the average order value would vary quite a bit from one month to the next for each of these groups, and they're actually grouped together pretty tight. And what's even more interesting is that in the last, say, 6 to 9 months, they've grouped even tighter. So it seems like, on average, people are spending about $320, $330 per order. And that seems to be the case, whether you're growing, contracting, thriving, at least for the last few months. And that's if we look across, it's the same sample set of data, but it's breaking it out by month.
It is. You're right. This isn't a super interesting one because they're so flat, but I'll throw in there that it's the thriving businesses of in the year 24. They moved up quite a bit, as we saw in those other graphs, to be able to like kind of they're up meeting the market of the other 80% of businesses that are out there, and I think that's that's interesting to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you spread it out over a whole bunch of orders, you get your average up, $20, and if you're doing 500 shoots a month, that adds up to some real money quickly.
Totally. So this next chart I think was actually quite a bit more interesting. So this is looking at the average order value by the list price of the home.
We did have something in here. Good.
We do. So I tried to break it out into about 9 different categories, somewhat evenly distributed around the number of listings, so that we could get a sort of a rough sense. And so what I find super interesting, and now this shouldn't be a surprise, that the more expensive the home is, the more people are willing to spend on the marketing packages for that home. What I did find surprising was how direct that correlation is. It is very tightly correlated.
Right.
So where a lot of people will try to say, oh, well, in this region, in the southeast region of the country, your average order value is one thing, and in the northeast it's another, or in the west it's something else. I actually think geography has less to do with what you can get for what a agent is willing to spend on media services. I think the house price is the thing that really drives that. And so what you end up with is some markets, the houses are just more expensive. And so therefore the average order value is going to be higher. And in other markets, they're less.
Yeah, right. Like here in Spokane, you get a $1 million house. There's not a ton of $1 million listings that are up there all the time. But, right, the photographers that are out there that are in smaller markets where, hey, it's not super common to have $1 million listing. But when that agent does, that's when you go back to what we were talking about earlier of like, tell that agent that if you want to get the next $1 million listing, if you want to be that person in your market, this is what you need to spend. This is what we're going to do to make sure that you capture this home in the best light. And that, like, you have to give them that reason to spend the money, the ROI, because they're already going to be a little bit nervous, especially if that's one of their first, kind of milestone listings to them.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in this chart, we actually broke US and Canada apart. That was really important to do based on the fact that the currencies are different.
Mm.
So, it's pretty interesting when you look at sort of the relationship here. In the US, it's basically, you basically start at like $150 to show up at the home, and then you can count on somewhere around $40 per $100,000 in the price of the home is what people are willing to spend. This is a great chart to go back and look at. What are the products that you're shooting? What are the packages that you're offering? And to build those packages so that they end up at a price point that is aligned with the median home price in your home and what some of those upper tier homes are looking like as well. The other thing that really kind of stood out to me is in Canada, the average order value starts much higher, but it has a flatter growth curve. So it seems like in Canada, the amount of upsells that people are willing to add isn't as high as it is in the US, but they start at a higher level. So I don't know if that means that there are fewer upsells to add, or if it means that they just include them all at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, their table stakes there. I know iGuide is super popular in Canada in particular, and so that is something that probably a much higher percentage of homes just are going to include. So but it's a fascinating. I thought this might have been one of the most interesting charts because the correlation was so direct.
Yeah, it really is. I think looking at the Canada stuff too, that they still have that. They have an even harder jump once you hit into that $1 million range too, which is, if you're a Canadian business and you're in markets where you have some of those listings, there are definitely agents out there that are willing to spend more to market those listings pretty dramatically, even from something that's in that 750,000 to 999.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that really is. That is a super interesting slide to me to think about. How do you build your package around, the premium listings in my area are priced about this. My premium package that I offer should be in this zone based on the data that we're looking at here, in that zone of like, hey, on average, people are spending this much per order when they have a listing of that dollar amount. I think that's like real stuff to take away and be thinking about, particularly if you are thinking about, hey, should I raise my prices? Maybe it's not, should I raise my prices? Maybe I need to reconfigure some of my packages, and I need to be thinking about what homes do I think these packages are being sold on. Like, if you've been operating a couple of years, you understand what agents, what listing price are going to, command what type of package that you offer, and you can figure out, are you high or low in your market?
Yeah, I also think it's interesting to kind of come at it backwards from how we usually think about this. And that is that, what is an agent willing to spend probably has the most to do with what's the listing price of the home more than, can I just convince them to spend a little more, or can I, what do I need to include in the package? If you understand sort of what their pain tolerance is for spending on listings at different prices, then you can build a package around that and build a package that's profitable, right? So let's move into some of the questions to analyze around this, because I think it's particularly interesting to consider, should I add services or should I raise prices? Those two things, how do I get if I know what the average order value is that I should be targeting for the homes in my market, does that mean I need to is there room to raise prices for what I'm already offering? Or to get more profit, do I need to increase or modify what's in the package?
Yeah, I totally agree. And when you think about those jumps, it's probably not that agent is willing to spend $400 for regular photos when on a lower price property, they're only willing to spend $200. So when you think about that, it is, what's the combination of services that are reaching that dollar amount?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that the dollar amount is probably more fixed than we tend to think of it in terms of what an agent is willing to spend. So then what that means is that the services can become how you win the business. Give them more value for that price point, and you'll win the business.
Yeah,
right?
right.
So here's some questions to think about on should I offer new services? Am I at risk of missing out on orders or losing clients because I don't offer the services they want to buy? This also kind of goes back to the availability question. You don't want to give a agent a reason to go work with some other photography or media company in your area. If you've got a limited set of products and services that you're offering, you may be causing them, once they get that high-end listing, to have to go talk to somebody else, and you just don't want to do
Oh
that.
man, yeah, you're giving up average order value.
Right.
Ugh.
Right. I think that the next question to consider is my average order value below the average in my market? If your average order is on par with what's going on in the marketplace already, then maybe this isn't something that you want to maybe that isn't something you want to play with. Because if you layer on additional services, if the agent doesn't have the capacity or the pain tolerance to pay more, no matter how good the service is, it may not be something that they'll pick up.
Yeah, right. That's probably not your easiest path to growth in 2026.
Totally. And then, the third question to think about: what services drive the greatest value per hour of my time in a home? This, I think, is one of the things that people almost never think about, and they really ought to, when it comes to adding services. And some of it is about, should I add the service? And some of it is as at what price should I offer this new service? You can increase your average order value, but if you add a product that takes you an extra hour on site and you aren't getting enough profit for that hour spent, if you reduce the number of orders you can shoot in a day and you don't get enough of an increase in your profit on that order, then you might just be working extra hard and not gaining anything. Even if your average order value goes up, is your average daily income going up? Maybe that's another way to think of it.
Yeah, I think the floor plan growth that we saw with the change in the way of capturing floor plans and making it so much faster, so many companies that I've talked to have been like, yeah, it's great. I can charge, $60 or $80 or $120 for this floor plan, and it takes me 15 minutes while I'm at the house. When you compare that to something like a 3D tour where it's going to take you a little bit longer to capture, that's where you start to get into like, hey, how much are you making for the time that you're actually there?
For sure. All right. And then lastly, should I raise my prices? This is one of the questions people always love to drill in on. And so some questions to think about there. Do my products solve problems for my clients that they value highly? This is so important. And not to pick on any of our customers or throw anybody under the bus, but there are times when I'm talking to photographers where they're like, well, if I just get my quality up a little higher, or if I just perfect my technique a little more, if that's time you're putting in that your clients aren't valuing, there's probably a better investment for your time and your effort.
I agree. It's like, I mean, yeah, it's just straight up.
Yeah.
People pay to solve problems, right?
Mhm.
They don't, it's not, you're going to get some of the people that love that super high quality, perfect image that was captured. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to do that stuff.
Totally.
It just probably isn't your fastest path to growth.
Yeah, there's a point of diminishing returns, and you just want to be aware of that. When you're first getting started, there's probably a lot of room for improvement in perfecting your technique for how you're doing lighting and composition and editing. But I also think that even beyond focusing on the products themselves that you deliver, think about some of the other sort of components of the total solution that they are experiencing. I mentioned this earlier, but what is the home seller's experience of the photographer in the home? Does that feel professional? Does that reflect positively back on the agent as I brought in a pro to come shoot the home? So are you showing up in a branded shirt and, with professional looking gear, or are you just kind of showing up like, I don't know, my cousin Vinny to take those photos.
Well, right. And then when you're delivering them back to the customer, are you keeping that brand? Are you on a platform that allows you to white label so you can maintain that brand experience the whole way? Or, if you're one of the ones that are just kind of out there and you deliver back through Dropbox, okay.
Yeah.
You're sort of run of the mill, right? It's not really showing them how much you care about your business.
Yeah, and again, also talking about things like including a marketing kit with the package, so that once they have the photos, they can do really productive things with those photos. So, generating reels that the agent can go to social media with to get the most value out of those photos. All those things add up to make a big difference. We've got to solve problems for the agent.
Right. And with the marketing kit, no extra time on site, just a different click of the button to enable it. And, I've seen a lot of businesses where, they may price it at something, or they may just include it in everything because it is just that great. And they've found that in their markets, it just makes that big of a difference. But other people will, price it, but then include it in a package where, the price compared to what they're actually paying, the cost is, they get a good ratio there where they can include it in a package and they're not giving up a ton of margin.
Yeah, or even profiting on it.
Well,
Right?
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then some other things to think about when it comes to raising prices. When's the last time I raised my prices? That, of course, matters a lot. You don't want to be doing it all the time. But if it's been several years since you've had any price increase, probably need to consider that.
Yeah, inflation's been tough the last few years, and gas costs more, your groceries cost more.
Yeah. And I think usually around the new year is a good time to make that proposal. I think telling your agents, here's my price sheet for 2026, I think they tend to accept that type of thing pretty easily.
The golf courses I like tend to do that. And I'm like, it's up, but they solve a problem for me.
Yeah. Well, and doing it during the slow time of year, people tend not to overly worry about it because it's money they aren't going to spend right this minute. And then later when the spring market hits and things get busy, well, now I've got an excitement around new listings, and it's less of a it's less of top of mind.
Yeah.
And then the third question to think about: have the products I offer improved since the list price increase? So since the last price increase. So if you are just starting out and you kind of priced your products as a start out price, or let's say you offer a new service. And as you have developed your technique and improved what you're including, that value increases. And so that it can be a good thing a good reason to increase the price.
Yeah. Or if you're at capacity, right? And if you're not in the position where you can bring on another teammate, but you're at capacity and your lead time is in that higher part where you're going to start to lose clients, sometimes it's better to raise your prices and let some of the clients self-select out and make sure that it's the clients that are cheaper and don't value your services, and you keep your good clients because they're still happy with all your lead time and they love working with you. They care. It's, you kind of get the people that are just price sensitive out.
Yeah.
But I would only do that if you're at capacity from that kind of standpoint.
Yeah, totally. So here's just some quick pricing rules of thumb, some things that we've talked about in the past that are helpful if you are going to raise your price. So number one, you've got to use packages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Preferably, if you do have packages on your shopping cart, you want to have 3 options, not 2, not 4. 3 is kind of the magic number. So the benefit to this is your top package is the anchor. That's going to be your most premium product. That's going to be most premium package. That's going to include as much as is reasonable to include in one package. And that sort of sets the tone for what the rest of the products or the rest of the packages look like. Then your mid-tier is kind of your main package. You want that to be slightly higher than average, but you want that to be the one that people are going to buy the most often. That's focusing on what is that median house list price in your market. Build a nice, strong, solid package that fits, and that should be your middle tier. The low price is a low price tier option or low priced package option is really there just to give the cheapskates a way out. But really it's to reframe that middle package as the one that everyone kind of drives to.
Yep.
The next thing to think about here is is it's always advisable to actually show your top tier package or your premium product first. Sometimes people will intuitively start with their lowest price and work their way up. It's better to start at the top and work your way down, because it changes the framing around the pricing and makes that middle tier a lot more palatable.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And then the last thing, as just kind of a rule of thumb, keep your price increases under 12% at a time. There's a bunch of research to show that if you raise your prices more than 12% or more, that's the sort of the trigger amount that causes people to consider alternative options. So if you can stay 10, maybe 8%, it's better to do price increases more often and smaller increments than to do big chunks less often. All right, so looking ahead to 2026, these are just some predictions about what we're seeing in the marketplace. They might be true, they might be not, but these are just some things that we're kind of noticing. So first off, I would say in 2026, I would expect more modest listing growth, nothing meteoric, nothing big, but it will probably still go up. We've got lowering interest rates that is helping, but we have an increase in uncertainty in the market, and that always acts as a brake pedal.
Sure.
Next up, we've got continued demand for floor plans. It seems like that is continuing to be. Seems like floor plans are continuing to grow quite a bit, and I think we'll see more of that as we head into 2026.
Yeah, right. Valued by the companies that were thriving in that top 20%. So how can you work them in? Should you put them in some more of your packages? Should you make it an upsell? There's lots of ways that you can decide, how do I want to push floor plans more than I have in the past, because I see what it does for other businesses.
Yeah, and anytime we see rapidly growing companies that are adopting a particular thing, they're quickly making that something that all the other companies are going to want as well.
Yep.
Next up, I would say mainstreaming of real-time scheduling and other features that used to be differentiators. So, 2-3 years ago, if you had real-time scheduling, that really set you apart. Today, it's table stakes. You just have to have it. People just aren't looking to work with companies that don't have some of those basic things built in.
You're preaching to the choir on that one. I love the smart scheduling.
Yeah. And then last up is, we're going to see a massive amount of use of AI. I think AI is, everyone loves to talk about AI, but I think it's really coming into its own, and we're seeing a lot of use cases that are starting to become more broadly adopted.
Yeah, right. People are figuring out how to actually solve problems in their business with it, instead of it just being kind of this neat thing that might be able to help.
Yeah. So some AI use cases that I think we can expect to see in our industry in particular. Image post-processing, of course, is massive. There's a whole bunch of new companies that have just sprung up in the last couple of years that are providing image post-processing services. And there seems to be a pretty aggressive amount of growth in how the quality of the AI post-processing processes are improving. They just keep getting better and better. So the next one, we haven't seen a lot of yet, but I think we probably will in 2026, which is generative content. So this is like, for example, taking a still photo and turning it into a short video clip, or, filling in areas of a photo that need modification. This is an area that I think we're going to see a lot of. It's an area that gives me some amount of concern. I think that there is the chance for AI to hallucinate things that maybe aren't present in the home. And I think we're just a couple of big lawsuits away from the market getting really cautious around this. But I think there's going to be people with high risk tolerance that are going to be playing around with this quite a bit. And again, the quality in what people are generating with this stuff is phenomenal. Like it's on just a really amazing curve of growth and improvement. And we'll see how it goes. Like I think that there's a sweet spot. There's probably some people that are going to fly a little too close to the sun and get burned. And I think there's others that will take a more cautious approach that will still develop some really compelling use cases.
Yeah, right. And we've seen a ton. The quality is going up for sure. I think a lot of those concerns are going to continue to to go down. So you'll have less risk as these products get better. Like, I know there's a lot of businesses that are out there using it. That's awesome. Just know some of the risks. Be careful in how you do that.
Yeah, for sure. And then the third category is agentic automation. This is something that's really just kind of coming on the scene now. But this is where you use a plugin in your browser or on your phone or something where the AI is actually helping automate some of the tasks, social media posting or things in the MLS. Like there's things where you can have an AI sort of run a browser on your behalf and complete certain tasks. And so I think that's another area where there's some risk associated with that. Hey, ChatGPT, plan me a vacation. Here's my credit card. Sounds like a scary proposition to me, but as this space grows, we're going to find where there are niches where this is super helpful at automating tasks that are kind of redundant and don't have to have a human being running.
So you mean like I shouldn't be going, hey, ChatGPT, plan the HDPhotoHub retreat?
Yeah,
With
don't do.
all right.
Yeah, don't do that, please.
It sounds like fun, though.
All right. So in closing, there's a couple things that we just want to put in here as reminders. National averages are not your local market. If you ask somebody, for example, what's the weather going to be like today? If you said, well, the average temperature of all the cities in the United States is going to be 50 degrees, that's worthless information. So, what you really want to know is what's happening in your local market, and your local market the best. So, our goal with providing a lot of these sort of broad aggregate numbers is to just help you get a rough sense. But you always have to take into consideration how the national differs from the local.
Yep, absolutely.
And just a word of inspiration, hopefully, or a word of encouragement. You can shift things in your favor. I hope that nobody watches this and looks at these stats and says, oh, I'm doomed because of X, Y, or Z in my marketplace. There are lots of opportunities here to rise above the averages. And many of our customers are doing exactly that. They're leveraging tools, and they're frankly just scrappy and great business operators that they care about their customers. They're hands-on in the marketplace. And so don't look at any of these things as sort of foregone conclusions. I think everyone should look at these numbers and figure out a way that they can sort of shift things in their favor or beat the curve. All right. And with that, that is all the data that we have today to present. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Herb, for coming and putting together the data. I know that sometimes that's not easy to do, so we appreciate the time that it takes to do that. But super excited to bring this as an opportunity to share some value and try to answer some questions of like, what do I want to change in my business from this year to next year? Now's the right time to be thinking of it. So I know that this is going to be valued, so I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian, and thank you for helping me co-host this. It's great to have a partner in this whole process, and I appreciate that too. I think for everyone watching and listening, please, if you disagree with any of our analysis or see an insight from some of these charts that maybe we missed, add it to the comments and share it with the community. All we're trying to do is present the data and do our best to analyze it based on our interactions. But if there's other things that we missed that are worth pointing out, point them out. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, right. It helps everybody.
Totally. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.